We're having a chat about all the stuff that, well, not all of it, but some of the things that we can learn from celebrity breakups. So thank you for joining us, everyone who's online with us. And I know that, this is also being recorded for YouTube. So hello to YouTube as well. So I'll start with some housekeeping things. Disclaimer, please note that the purpose of this series is to discuss general information on separation, divorce, and family law matters. Any information provided here should not be construed as legal advice. Also, if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature to submit your comments and questions. If you have questions regarding a specific matter, your specific matter, please call our office or a lawyer in your area to book a consultation to receive tailored advice. Also, please stay tuned until the end because we will share how you can schedule a free 20-minute initial consultation with one of our lawyers. All right. So I'm Jodine. I'm an articling student here at Russell Alexander. We have with us Golan Yaron, one of the lawyers here at Russell Alexander, family law expert with I won't say expert, a family law practitioner with lots of years of experience in Ontario courts. So thanks for being here, Golan. Golan is an associate family law lawyer and a certified mediator with over 25 years of legal experience. He was first called to the bar in Israel in 1996 and then called here in Ontario in 2003. Golan has extensive experience in representing clients and negotiation agreements as well as trial work. He also has experience in negotiating with the authorities to advance a client's interests and has represented clients at various levels of court, including the Court of Appeals. Yay! Got through it.
You're gonna make it, Jordan, you're gonna make it like a TMZ style now, right?
Oh,
It's
oh, I should. I haven't watched TNC in so long, so you can take the charge on that one if you want.
I don't know, it's the gossip about all these celebrities which
Ah, yes,
I'm
yes.
not very familiar with, so hoping that the audience are probably gonna relate better than us.
Oh, wait, but this is kind of old news. This isn't anything breaking news currently, but we will be talking about what we can learn from some messy, high-profile divorces. Because from celebrity breakups to billionaire battles, we've seen all of that in headlines, as Golan has alluded to. But behind all that glamour, I think these cases can offer some insight about domestic agreements, maybe parenting disputes, and best interests of the child, right? So all of those things are relevant in Ontario family law, and we'll be talking about that today. So our first case study is the relationship of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. So this is one of the most drawn out parenting disputes in Hollywood, I guess. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, they were battling over parenting time and decision-making responsibilities since 2016. And to give you a bit of background, they have 6 children together. And by the time the custody battles began, their eldest was already an adult, so he wasn't in the picture in terms of, custody arrangements. But their 5 younger children were at the center of a heated dispute. So Angelina Jolie wanted sole decision making, whereas Brad wanted joint parenting time. So this dragged on for years. For 2021, I think it wrapped up. Yeah. And so at the end of it, Brad was awarded joint custody. So Golan, I think one of the questions I'll ask is, how common is it for one parent to try and block the other from seeing their children during a divorce? And what are the implications of that?
Thank you, Jordan, for that. And thank you for having me on this fascinating topic. I
Yeah,
get to learn some of the gossip that I did not catch on during the years, because all I was aware of is that both of them were still making good movies over those
true.
years. So I was like,
Hmm.
maybe it was not as messy as we think. But in any
Well,
event, well, it just it looks like it was more occupying their lawyers than themselves in terms of their movie making business. In any event,
exactly.
to be serious for a moment on the topic, uh, I don't know if calling it blocking one parent from having parenting time with the other, but it's not uncommon that we find, especially parties that are not really educated on the idea or have not put the preference and priority of the children over that of their own, and they kind of almost they're really using a child to advance some other goal in the dispute that's going on, whether it's to gain advantage, or to leverage that, and pressure the other side to give in on um, child support issues or spousal support issues. So, but the use of not letting a parent seeing the child, firstly, it's wrong, and it's not in the normally it's not always in the best interest of the child, assuming that a there was no safety concern to the child from the other parent.
Hmm.
With all of that, being kind of in normal in the sense that both parents were in the life of the child, seeing him on a daily basis, etc. The idea of not letting a child see one of the parents all of a sudden, just in some situation it's been, I've seen situation of weeks that the one parent did not get to see their child. Normally, it leads to urgent motions and expensive court proceedings. In other situation, we managed to engage the other parents, and the other parent who's withholding parenting, and engage in discussion, maybe causing them to retain a lawyer, and then with the assistance of both lawyers, we managed to get things moving in the right direction in terms of parenting, so the child is not being deprived of either parent in terms of seeing them and bonding, and all. It also depends on the age of the child. There some at the later age you want to consider their wishes, their preferences,
Hmm.
but all of that. Yeah, so to the question of whether it happens, yeah, it does happen, because I think some parents are not thinking straight, in the sense that they're not seeing the best interest of the child before trying to advance their own agenda by deciding to take control of the parenting arrangement, and not letting a child see the other parent. So that's, in my view, most times would be a wrong and unwise action of that parent.
For sure.
Again, this is with a caveat of there are situations that it is justified, whether it's a safety concern or something
Mhm.
that is truly um, of such justifying the withholding of a child from seeing the other. Maybe there is a threat of absconding the country,
Mhm.
things of that nature that may require some judicial assistance before, or supervision of the parenting before the other parent get to resume parenting or see the child.
Thanks, Golan. And so I guess in situations where where there's a lot of conflict between the parents and maybe they don't see eye to eye on um, you know, decisions regarding the children, what kind of, I guess, mechanisms can be put in place to avoid those kinds of disputes from popping up?
Well, firstly, I mean, if they're already in a situation of separation, you're hoping that parents are mature enough to really look at what's best for the child in terms of parenting arrangements. And,
Right.
it's the idea of I want to keep the child so I can get more money for child support. That should not be the motivation over the arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
It should be just a consequence of the arrangement. Um, there is a ways that we utilize. Normally, it's post-separation situation that we suggest to have a parenting professional that we add to a team when we practice collaborative um, practice here in a family scenario here and trying to work out something that would be a comprehensive agreement between the parties. In those situations, we sometimes engage a parenting professional that would engage the parents, sometimes even speak to the children, depending on their age and maturity, and come up with a plan that would work for the parents. And then we can, kind of put that together in a parenting plan that can be a part of a more comprehensive separation agreement. In some situation, you have the parents still living under the same roof, although they are separated. So their parenting continues, and because the children are still at home and the parents are still at home, only
Right.
that they're not living
They're
together.
not
So
together. Mm-hmm.
so that situation, even in that kind of scenario, if they already on talking terms or at least engaging a solicitor, this idea of engaging a professional to assist in the parenting is not uncommon, and we can definitely take advantage of these professionals. Sometimes they're social workers with experience in the area, and we like to use them. We find them to be more so when both parties engaging them or both lawyers engaging the same professional, it takes a more objective view of the parenting plan and arrangement. So one parent does not feel that it's coming from one of the lawyers or one-sided. So yeah, that's one of the methods that we can use to avoid this stressful situation post-separation that causes drastic measures
Yeah.
that one parent thinks is the right thing to do.
So shifting a little bit from parenting issues, we'll go to the other bucket of issues, which is the money problem. So, specifically in Brad and Angelina's situation, they were battling over a French winery that they purchased together for like $60 million. Anyways, after years of negotiation, I think Angelina ended up selling her shares to some Russian oligarch. So the papers say, um, without Brad's consent. So Brad ended up suing her, claiming that they had an agreement, yada yada, and the rest, it's bosh. So what would you say if someone is going through a divorce and they own a business with their former spouse? What are the implications of that in going through divorce?
Right. So, firstly, I do not know the specifics about
Yeah.
uh, Angelina and Brad. Wishing them all the best. They definitely had a lot to fight for when we're talking about millions of dollars. but it's not uncommon that we have family businesses, let's call them, where both parties are involved, and sometimes that's the livelihood of the family that
Yeah.
comes from that family business. The 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 implication or the consequences of a divorce, it normally comes with the need to equalize their assets,
Mm,
a and a business is an asset,
yeah.
and it needs to be considered in terms of valuation. It needs to be considered in terms of control of the company, who's going to remain in control. Sometimes we're looking at transferring of shares as part of the equalization process, meaning as part of the overall equalization process that we have in Ontario, which takes into account all the assets.
Yeah.
And one of them could be that business that if assuming that the parties cannot cannot stay together in the business because it's the animosity or the atmosphere is not conducive to continue on with the both working in the same business. But nevertheless, maybe they want to keep it in the family. Maybe they want to sell it to a third party and then divide the proceeds.
Mhm.
So there's many things that can happen in consequence. One want to think about what's worthwhile. They have to take tax implication into consideration, what's going to happen, in terms of capital gains and other aspects of accounting. And for that purpose, we normally, depending on the size of the company, depending on the complexity, utilizing an actuary or business valuator may be
Yeah.
necessary, and it's part of the process of getting to know the value of the shares and getting to know the value of the a company overall, and that helps with coming up with the plan for the division of the assets.
Mhm.
So that is in a nutshell, few of the topics that may arise when people are married and they get divorced, and they both have to consider their future with the same business, or even one of the parties' business in that
Right.
respect.
Yeah, I mean, of course you could go on because businesses themselves are complex, and you can have owners or people who have shares in the business who are not the couple, and then you have to consider that.
Right.
So yes, that was a excellent overview of that particular scenario. But let's move on to some more big money. So Jeff Bezos and his ex, MacKenzie Scott. So they were married in 93, ended up having 4 children together. But unlike Jolie and Pitt, their divorce settled rather quickly. And if you know who Jeff Bezos is, you know he has a lot of money. So, despite involving one of the largest asset divisions in history, this was over like that. So, several outlets reported that Scott and Bezos did not have a marriage contract or prenup. And it's also not known if they had a postnup. Anyways, in Washington, it is a community property state, which means that everything is kind of like a joint asset. So held jointly by the couple, regardless of who earns the asset, who incurs the debt. That meant that all the wealth earned in the marriage, Amazon included, was subject to the division under Washington state law. So by the end of this, Mackenzie Scott ended up getting 38 billion in Amazon stocks, while Jeff Bezos remained in control of Amazon and the Washington Post. So, Golan, for
It
the
is so
rest of us,
juicy, Joe. It is so
I
juicy,
know.
that
I,
gossip, man. Like
I
unbelievable.
I didn't know some of this stuff. I knew it was a I knew it was a huge settlement, but I had no idea how much money it was. Can you imagine? You got half of something, and that half is $38 billion. My
It,
goodness.
In some state, this is the total budget of some of the states that they can think of, like the annual
Wow.
budget in other countries. But this is fun to talk about because the numbers
Yes.
is just out of this world.
Yeah,
But I'm
astronomical.
sure
Yeah.
there is questions that arise from um, I think what you want to ask about the
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 cohab
the
agreements
the
or marriage
cohabitation and
contract.
the
Yes.
reason that they actually came to a quick determination of their situation or
Mm,
resolution of their situation, which is quite interesting. But it goes to tell you that it is dependent on personalities,
yeah.
on how amicable things were when the decision to separate came about. It's not like they didn't have the money to fight
Of course.
or
Yeah.
to spend on lawyers if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps for the sake of their children and their own mental health, it was
Yeah.
definitely something that was worth their while to bring it to a resolution as quick as they did.
Mm-hmm.
The to get to something that would be that quickly, one of the things that we suggest to clients and not to client is to consider a cohabitation agreements or marriage contract, as some of these are considered if somebody wants to go into a marriage situation. Um, so what does that entail? It means that the parties come to actually think about the possibility that this relationship may not last and what we're going to do if it doesn't last. Statistically, I do not know if the number is now around the 40%. It may not last. So
Mm.
should we not should we bury our head in the sand, or should we look at it as a possibility that a we're not necessarily going to be out of the statistics.
Mm.
And in that respect, you want to kind of say, all right, what's going to happen if it happens? And hopefully you will never have to use these documents. But in many situations, it helps settle property issues, support issues that may arise at the end of a relationship. So having each party getting a lawyer is preferable, of course. Running through their financial a assets and liabilities, so everything is on the table and everybody's aware of each other's situation, and then coming to terms with how do we want this to be fairly resolved if the situation arises. And that normally leads to a less controversial a solution at the end of it, unless the very agreement is being challenged. If it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been done right, so you have to follow the very I should say, you have to be mindful of the rules of the law of the
Rules of
statute of
contract.
how
Yeah.
how the preparation of cohabitation agreement should take place. The timeline, you don't want a situation where cohabitation agreement is being placed on the table, in the chapel for one party to sign, and without a disclosure of all the assets, independent legal
Mm.
advice, and understanding of what's being what are the terms of such a cohabitation or domestic contract, as we refer to. So yeah, this is definitely something that is advisable, especially with people that come into the relationship um, with assets, and they don't want to feel like they're being taken advantage of if the situation doesn't succeed, the relationship fails, and they want to protect what they came into the marriage with. Similarly, in situation where a family business is involved, and sometimes the other partner in a business may require you to have
Mm,
that asset excluded from your family situation if your family situation it requires equalization because they don't want to be affected by a scenario of equalization when they have to sell the shares and maybe buy the party out in order to
right.
provide him with the funds to to use that in the equalization process. So all of that definitely calls and justifies a talking to a lawyer about a whether a cohabitation agreement would be appropriate and what should be the terms to include in that.
Yeah. And really, it's also taking control of your own situation. You don't have those kinds of contracts. You do end up kind of leaving it to the judicial system, the court to decide. If you end up in family law proceedings. And so I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, at the end of the day, if we can avoid the a situation of legal proceeding, it's always preferable, not only to the parties in terms of the cost of doing that, but there is a lot of stress that goes along with that. There's a lot of if there are children, it affects the children, it affects the atmosphere. It's not everybody is able to cope with the pressure, the stress, and everything that goes with it. That's why we always suggest that there are other alternative dispute resolutions. What it means is there's a way to resolve things without going to court, whether it's negotiation, whether it's mediation, whether it's through what we use as a collaborative practice where we actually take the parties, the lawyers, and other professionals to join as a team and work together to find the best solution for the family. And all of that can avoid going to court and the enormous cost sometimes that is associated, and not to mention the stress and emotional toll that it takes from parties that are involved in this in such scenarios. So it's always better to try to find an alternative dispute resolution.
Yeah.
And when parties are with the mindset of resolving things, then most times it is possible to resolve it with the assistance of a professional.
Hmm.
Sometimes they're not always on the same page and they don't know what their entitlement, and that's a reason to have a lawyer on their side to be able to get the advice that they need, and at the
Hmm.
same time making an informed decision on a how things should end and a how what parenting arrangement we should have and what kind of division of asset we should implement, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely there's a way to avoid it, but if it's not avoidable and you need to go there, then sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah.
We're not a stranger to that world of the court, and
Mm.
we are there on a weekly basis times. Some of us more than others, but we even when we are in the process, we still try to explore options, even with the assistance of a judge, to just get the
Yeah.
views and get the idea of how things might unfold if it does go to trial, right? So
Right.
we're really trying to use prediction here and advise clients accordingly in
Yeah.
terms of
And
what's going to happen, and can we maybe spare all this cost and stress
mm,
that and the delay. Don't forget that the court
there's
system
a
is
lot
now
of delay. Yeah.
right. That
Yeah. It's a
sometimes we're
lengthy
waiting.
process. Yeah.
Absolutely, and just to kind of tell you right, like now, I was just filing for an application and looking for a first hearing in Toronto, and the first date
Yeah.
that was offered was August.
Yeah. And
Okay,
that's
so
lucky
and that,
because
yeah,
you
I was
could
like,
get November or something, you know?
you're thinking August, that's 5 months away, and then you're losing on the spring market, you're losing on this and that. So there's a lot of things that are that are not favorable in our
Mm-hmm.
judicial system, and that unfortunately it's not some resources are still missing, and we need to find other ways to bring the resolution rather earlier rather than later.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And thanks for reminding us about those alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that are open to, parties going through separation or divorce. Because, yeah, sometimes, people think family law, they automatically head to court. And, definitely ask a lawyer about if those alternative dispute resolutions might work in your situation. So now we'll move on to our next case study, which is Madonna and Guy Ritchie. I actually didn't even know what Guy Ritchie looked like. I know his movies, like I think it's Lock, Stock, and Smoking Barrel. Anyways, whatever it is, that one's a good one. I think Jason Statham is in that one. I like that one a lot. But anyways, so their divorce wasn't just about money. We're back to parenting disputes now. So they had a parenting dispute over, one of their sons. And Madonna lived in New York and Guy Ritchie is British, so he was in England. And the kid, who was 15 at the time, wanted to stay in London with his father instead of going back with Madonna to New York. And you know, although the court ruled that Rocco, that's his name, should return to his mother, they also found that forcing him to return would not be in his best interest. So we've spoken about best interest before, and I think especially in this case where we have an older child who is expressing his own wants and desires in terms of which parent he wants to stay with, it kind of changes things. Maybe. I don't know. Golan, you tell us. Does this case show that teenagers have a say in their in parenting disputes?
Well, firstly, the short answer is yes. The longer there's a longer answer though.
There is a
And
longer
by the
answer.
way, Guy Ritchie, one of the movies that I did like of him was Snatch, which is very similar to that
Oh,
Lock, Stock, and
Snatch. That's a
Two
good one.
Smoking Barrels.
Lock,
And a
stock, and two
recent one
smoke.
that I saw on Netflix was The Gentleman. I don't know if you got a chance to
Oh, I haven't
see that.
seen The
It's actually
Gentleman yet.
very smart type comedy
Oh yeah,
drama situation.
I'll have to look
In
into
any
that
event,
one.
one of the to the topic of the children and whether they can influence their situation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Firstly, we know that even the convention, the UN Convention on the Child, uh, warrants that children's opinion and views and preferences be heard. So they're definitely calling for that, and legislation, including in Ontario, have implemented that views and preferences of a child can be heard, and we use the office of the children's lawyer at times to get that views and preferences. It really depends on the age of the child, the maturity level. So we cannot tell you whether it's a age of 10, 11, 12, or 15. It really a matter of maturity and a how a child can articulate what they truly wish. Now, it doesn't mean that what they wish is what's going to happen. It just means that
Right.
it has to be considered. And
Mhm.
sometimes when there is merits to it, in a situation like when somebody wants to be in one country and the other parent is in another country, that could be significant, right? Where is your school? Where is your friends, your family? what's your connection to each of these situations and communities. All of that
Mm-hmm.
has to come into play. And children, have, they might be in a hockey team in one place and they want to continue with that advancement. And maybe there is some, say that somebody's growing up in Canada and the other parent wants to go to Australia when there's hardly any hockey, if any. I don't know if there is any, but you
I
know what I
know.
mean? Like if a child
Yeah.
if a child wants to continue with that path and you want to encourage that and he's talented, then it might be taken into account very seriously.
Yeah.
Um, Other situation could be this, a child disabilities and resources available at the community to assist
Mm-hmm.
that child with maybe autism or other type of disability that it needs help, and the resources are available,
Mm-hmm.
in one location as opposed to another.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another aspect of best interest of the child. A child may have, a group of friends that are very connected and bond with, and they want to stay together. The school may be a place where you want them to continue and strive. And it's not an easy relocation to impose on a child, especially against their will in a sense, against what they want, because that could only lead to more resentment or until a child settled with the situation or come to term with it and learns to live in these changing scenarios. So the views of the child are being obtained by a which to get those through professionals, social workers, psychotherapists, and such that are able to know how to approach the child and speak to them and get the information that we need. They normally report back to the parties, and many times we find that once we have that report, once we know what the child wants, and we don't suspect that there was a foul play in the sense that there was overly influence undue influence of one parent over the views of the child.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and if the children are willing and wanting to keep the child happy, they might take that statement into account and realize, oh, that's what my child really wants. He spoke, to a third party about this and maybe he was not forthcoming with that opinion when they approach the child, or maybe when the child is just trying to appease one parent and he tells both parents what they want to hear because he doesn't want to disappoint either of them. But when he goes to speak to the professional, all of a sudden the true, his true wishes and preferences come out,
Mm-hmm.
and that could lead to settlement. It's definitely something that judges would have to consider again with all the factors that we spoke about of age, maturity, um, and other things that could affect the best interest of the child. So, like I said, the short answer is yes.
The short answer is yes. And I think that was the mid answer that you gave, the medium-sized one, because I'm sure you could go on for longer and give
Uh,
the long answer.
we actually have we actually have a few programs on the voice of the child that we had done
Yes, we have.
with Russell, and we're probably going to have them again. I don't know if it's going to be during this year
Mm.
or one of the summits, but definitely, if anybody's interested, they could definitely look up some of these programs that we have run.
Yeah, they should be on our YouTube channel. So quick plug, please go to our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I think the final couple that we're gonna talk about, let's keep it Canadian, Shania Twain and Mutt Lange. So this one is a little messy. So finally, we have one of the most emotionally charged divorces. So apparently, Mutt had an affair with Shania's best friend, leading to their divorce. But in a crazy twist, Shania later married the ex-husband that of the woman that her ex-husband cheated on her with. Oh my gosh, that must have been so messy. But it really wasn't about the finances in this situation. Well, that's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on the emotional betrayal, and the devastation that can come with your spouse finding out your spouse had an affair, and with your best friend at that. Anyways, so Golan, as we have discussed in previous after hours, divorce is extremely emotional and it can elicit some really big actions and reactions that can impact divorce settlements. So, what might you say to someone going through a highly emotional divorce? Um, yeah, I think that's my
Well,
question.
so first it sounds like Shania Twain and Mutt somehow did a switcheroo of some kind. Like they
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
they
yeah, they
basically took
got
another
each other's
couple and
partners. Yeah, it's weird.
in any event, well, it's when we read about it and we look at it from the outside, it looks, kind of amusing. When people are going through that, it's extremely stressful. It's you know, heartbreaking at times.
Mhm.
The breakdown of a family unit is not always just between the couple, but then it involves especially when it involves children, it takes, it has its toll on everybody. Um, the suggestion is always to firstly have not be in denial, and that's part of the stages that when we speak about a divorce situation, we speak about stages of anger, we speak about denial, we speak about acceptance. These are some stages that people go through in this process. To have this in control, you definitely want to be able to speak about it to somebody, and it's better to be with a professional. So counseling is always something that is a recommended, a to see how you can channel these emotions to other situations, so it will not burst to something that is impulsive, that can lead to maybe violence. And it's not uncommon that we hear about, that we have to deal with domestic incidents that are kind of a consequence of you mentioned a betrayal before. So that's kind of a reaction that could be taken by one party against the other, because the emotional baggage here is so great that the other person feels that the only way is to, the retribution is more important than
Retaliation.
the retaliation, than
Mhm.
anything that without thinking the consequence and how it's going to reflect and what's going to happen to them later.
Right.
Sometimes the short-sighted kind of views of what's my reaction is going to look like, and how it's going to affect everybody around me, and including financially, because at the later stage you may need also a criminal lawyer, not only a family lawyer. So all of that is something that you wanna avoid, and by having that resource of or the ability to go and speak to somebody, a professional especially, to try to channel that emotion and keep it in check. Uh, and in other situations, you may need to detach yourself from the environment. So you may need to leave. Sometimes you have to come up with a plan. You can talk to your lawyer about it. You may need a safety plan, because, if you know that you have done something that the other side may retaliate or do something that is not predictable or concerning, you may want to talk about a safety plan for yourself. And that's another, the other side of the emotional charged person that you want to ensure a safety and security of yourself. So, speaking to a lawyer about the situation is always advisable. Also to understand that, we're running in Ontario a no-fault divorce. What does that mean? It means that That the judge is not going to look at one saying, "Oh, you cheated, therefore you're not
Right.
going to see your children anymore." That's not the way it works here, right? And that's the reason that you know, the blame game is not the issue here. And but nevertheless, human behavior is different than that. They're not always looking at what is the legal implication, but rather I need to react. That's what I feel right now, and that's the reason we want that to be in control and um, in a way that would not affect negatively those that are surrounding you and yourself.
100. Yeah, so definitely it's hard to think rationally when you're like super emotional. So as just repeating what Golan said, maybe speak to a therapist or a professional about what you're feeling. And also, if it calls for it, you be the judge of whether or not you should speak to a lawyer, but it's always advisable to speak to a lawyer. So, man, we covered a lot today. Thank you
Oh,
so
great.
much, Golan.
And
That was fun.
thank you for the juicy gossip here. I did
The
not know all these
goss.
things.
You know what
Did
the
not
kids
know
say? The
that.
kids say the tea. That's what they say. You got the tea now.
There you
Did
go.
you?
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I'm up to speed with it, right?
Yeah. Yep. 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 So thank you everyone for tuning into Family Law Now. Following this session, there will be a brief survey which will appear, allowing you to share your comments and suggestions for future topics you'd like us to explore. Also, please give feedback. It's appreciated. So you can also take advantage of the opportunity to book a complimentary consultation with one of our lawyers. That would be a 20-minute consultation. So please contact our intake team at intake@russellalexander.com and provide the code April 25 to schedule your appointment. Registration is now open for our next event, and that will be how to prepare for court. So something very practical. Please go to russellalexander.com/family law now to register. So thank you again to Golan, and thank you for everyone watching here on Zoom and on YouTube for later. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys another time. Thanks, Golan.
Thank you, Jardine, and with a pleasure as always.
As always. Have a good one.
Bye for
Bye
now.
now.
Take care.